Hi everyone, this is Brian Kling with Being Civil. Welcome back to the next in our video series on the upcoming features in Civil 3D 2010. We're going to continue to focus on the ribbon because that's one of the major new items in the product, and it's important that we get a sense of how to work with it because it's one of the features that's going to be up and running and you're going to be using it all the time. So first let's start off. I'll do a real quick review from the last time. Remember, we have tabs across the top. We have panels, collections of panels. At the bottom is the title of that panel. So we have the anticipated most used commands that are visible, and then if we select the down arrow where available, we sometimes have some other options as well. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at a little bit of the structure here, so a little bit more of the tips about the ribbon. So if you're an old-time user like me and you've been working a long time, you're used to having as much screen real estate, as much drawing display as possible. So there are ways to control this ribbon. Once you have become more familiar with it, you may not need to have everything open all the time and you want to see more of your drawing area. So what you can do is select this arrow up here. We can see the first option is minimize to panel titles. So we select that. Now we can see we just have the tab names and then we have the panel titles. As I roll my cursor over them, it's actually opening, and what it's showing me is the entire panel. So the commands that were always up in the full ribbon, and then the extended ones as well along the bottom. So as I roll my cursor over, the panel opens up, I can select something, and then as I roll my cursor off, it'll close up automatically. Now if I really want to go for the minimalist view, I can select it again, and now I only get the tabs along the top. Notice the cursor does not automatically open them. I have to actually click and select something. So I go ahead and click, then that opens that full ribbon. Then I can select my commands out of here from the panels. As I move my cursor away, it will close up automatically. Okay, so that gives me the maximal display area in my drawing. Then if I decide, well, I want to go back to the default, that's the last option. It just is a round trip, so we have 3 different states here. So this goes back to the default of the full ribbon. Okay, so that's another tip for today on the structure of the ribbon. Now let's focus on one of the greatest parts of version 2 of this ribbon. So as we know in some of the other Autodesk products, they've already had the ribbon for a release, and with the second release of the ribbon technology, we have what are called context menus. And we have a couple different ones to look at today, so I want to describe a concept for you, and that is the concept of noun-verb selection. You may have heard of that before. So when we're working with items within our drawing, we have 2 options really. I can decide on an action that I want to perform, or a command I want to use, same thing. So I select the command or the action, and then I select the objects I want to perform that command or that action on. So that's called verb-noun selection. We select the verb or the action first, and then I perform it on certain objects, which are the nouns. And we can also do the reverse. I can select the object first, and then I can perform edits to the object. So that's noun-verb selection. And depending on which one of those workflows you use, you'll see a little bit, just slightly different options on the ribbon, which are organized quite conveniently for you. So let's try the modify option first. We'll try the verb noun selection. So what do I want to do? I want to modify an object. So I go to that modify tab. Then say I want to look at the corridor. So I select corridor. Now look at the next tab that has opened up automatically here. It has a different color. It's kind of reminding me that it's something different than the normal set, our default set. So up in here we see a color. It's kind of a bluish purple. This is our corridor modify tab. And we can see over on the left we have some real generic items in the first panel, which we'll see in just about every modified tab. So object properties, object viewer, things like that. Then we get here into the modify panel, which is specific to this object. So this is where we can select what commands we want to use to work on a corridor. Then as mentioned last week, we have over here the Launchpad panel, and that is anticipating where I want to go next. After I performed my edits to the corridor, what is it I'd probably want to do next? And that's all based on complex workflows and studies and research that the product design team performed. So this is not just a random selection here. The items which I think would happen the most often based on their research are up here, and then once again we have the down arrow, which allows us a few other options as well. As I pull my cursor away, of course it rolls up. So we can see also over on the right here we have a close button. So what that's telling us by default is, since I have a close button, that this is not going to close until I actually select it. So as you've seen, when I move the cursor away, nothing happens. I can initiate commands here, make edits, and continue to work on corridors. So that's the distinction here. I would use the modify option and then pulling out a modify tab when I want to work on multiple objects perhaps, or it's just, user wish. But these will stay open until I close them. So for example, if I wanted to edit the surface, I could go back to that modify tab, go over here to surface. Notice now we have two of these modify tabs. So they are going to stay open until I close them. So now I could modify my surface or surfaces, multiple surfaces. I could hop back to corridors, work on those, and these are going to stay available for me until I hit that close button. Okay, so I'll go ahead and close those out, and now we'll show you the other option. So the other option is I can select the object first and then perform the edits. So let's select the corridor. So we still have, when we select the corridor, we can right click just like before and we get our options, corridor properties, etc. But we also have now, as you can see up above, now we have a green tab, very similar to the previous bluish purplish tab, but this one's green. And what that means is, notice we don't have a close button over here. So I've selected the object. Once I perform the edits, then this tab will disappear. So I have the corridor selected right now. I could change something about it. When I'm done, if I deselect, so I hit the escape key, deselect the object, it returns automatically back to my default ribbon view. We also have one additional type tab, which I'll show you, and I believe the only occurrence of this is with the corridor section editor. So let's go back to corridor and initiate that. If you've worked with the program before, you know that the corridor section editor is kind of a special tool that's kind of on its own. It moves us into a section view of the corridor. So I go ahead and select the corridor. So it changes us from plan view. We're actually physically stepping through the corridor and looking at each application where the assembly is applied based on our parameter settings. Now notice here the tab color is actually a cyan or a teal color. And that's just telling us that we're actually using that corridor section editor. It's a different type of an application. So we can go ahead and step through as we're familiar with in this new interface, but it's similar to the old command selections. And once again, we have that close button over here. So once we're finished, we can close it out. And then remember, we did initiate the modified tab to open it up, so we close that out as well. All right. So that should give you a pretty good overview of one of the greatest parts about the ribbon that we have for this next release. These context menus, as you can appreciate, are really great because, as I said, the menu works for you. You do your work in the drawing. You don't have to go and click a bunch of down arrows and go through a bunch of pull-down menus. The menus arrive at you the right information at the right time, as we talked about last time. Okay, and looking forward to the last video next week. We'll talk a bit more about the structure of the ribbon. We'll cover a few things about how do I find my old commands and things like that. So stay tuned, and also Jason and Justin will be preparing some videos in the future, so you won't have to just hear my voice every time. Thanks a lot for participating and being civil. Please do give us comments and feedback. We do appreciate it, and thanks for listening. Bye.